Welcome to the Alternative Car Show, and yes, we are back with a brand new episode. This week we are concentrating on the Chevy V8, an engine that has punched above its weight, you could say, and has powered cars all over the world, not just in Chevrolets. And to celebrate that, we are looking at a couple of production cars, or a replica of a production car in one case, of cars that used the Chevy V8 that weren't actually Chevrolets. Anyway, without further ado, here is a really spectacular Vauxhall Firenza V8. Nick Strafford, thank you very much for agreeing to talk to us. Tell us the inspiration for this car, because there's a story behind why you did it.
Well, I'd been a Vauxhall fan ever since my father bought his first new car, which was a Vauxhall V8 in 1971. And I've always had this connection with them. And when historic rallying started with the post-historic class, that then enabled us to use some of the older stuff that I like the Firenzas. But the problem with them is the engines were not easy to get parts for. And I thought, I'm going to have a look on the internet and see if there's anything else out there. I knew I had a friend who got one of these cars, but his was a road car. And the rules state that you've got to be able to prove that a car was used on rallies in period. And so I did some surfing on the internet and found this and thought, right, great, that's where I'm going to go to. So I managed to get hold of one of the guys who rallied one of these over in South Africa. And I rang him up and I said, can you remember the specification of the car? And he said, oh, I don't know, it's 30 odd years ago, I'm not sure that I can do that, but I'll give it some thought, I'll send you a fax. Anyway, true to his word, a couple of days later, a fax arrived and it said, Dear Mick, they built 100 of these cars to homologate them for racing. I thought we could use this as a rally car. They told me it would never work. They were wrong, it did. If you do this and this to the car, you will annihilate escorts. Kind regards, Jan. And to be fair, I took this to the Motorsports Authority, which is now Motorsport UK. I took that to them and said, this is the specification that we've been told they ran in. And they said, yeah, great, go for it. So we built it over a period.
So explain for the uninitiated who haven't even seen the car yet, right? It's not a normal Firenza engine. They did something a bit special. They
did, yeah. They managed to get hold of, I think it was 104 5-litre engines from America, which you'd think to yourself, well, surely that's not difficult. But back then, when the boss of GM South Africa contacted America and said, can we have these engines? They said, how many do you want? He said, we want just over 100. They said, no, we'll do you 10 or we'll do you 10,000, but we're not doing 100. And this guy pestered and pestered and pestered until eventually they did. So they sent over the engines, they sent over some 4-speed Muncie gearboxes, and a guy called Basil van Rooyen over in South Africa put these cars together with a fair bit of help from General Motors. They started racing them and the things were incredibly successful. They were a lot quicker than the V8 Capris and were doing really well. And then unfortunately, the fuel crisis hit in 1973 and that was the end of it. So they disbanded the team, they sold the cars off. The race cars, they're supposed to have been broken for spares, and certainly the rally cars were broken as well, so none of them exist. So what we did with this is we built the best replica that we could do of the car back in its day. And we brought it out in 2010, and then we've been using it ever since, and it's just been a fantastic journey.
Western when I was there. This is the only car that got more attention than the Group B cars. It was the loudest car, the most spectacular car, and it was instantly crowd favourite, which I presume is a lot of what it was aimed at. But you've got a Camaro V8.
Yeah.
4-speed gearbox.
Yeah, 4-speed Muncie gearbox.
Rear axle.
Volvo. Yeah, it's a Volvo. I think it's either a 240 or a 960.
I think it'll be a 940 or 960 because ours has got an automatic. It comes with a limited slip diff.
Ah, right.
So it's that.
So
one.
that's probably This is obviously this has got a limited slip diff as well.
Having the axle.
Yeah, yeah, that's what they used back in the day, and we found it to be a really, really strong axle, which it needs to be, as you can see.
You know, my dad's going to be so happy because Vauxhall with a Volvo axle is what we're driving now.
Yeah, absolutely. They're an amazing thing. It was really one man's vision, which was Basil Van Rooyen, who wanted to do this. I believe he fell out with the Ford team manager, and he approached General Motors and said, "Look, I want to do this." And interestingly, the guy who backed him from GM, the boss of GM South Africa, was a guy called Bob Price. And Bob Price left there, came to Vauxhall, saw Ford's winning the RAC rally year in, year out, and said to a guy called Bill Blydenstein, who was running the Works Vauxhall team back then, "What do we need to do to win the RAC?" And he was the guy that then sorted out the Chevette HS. So the guy's been brilliant, absolutely brilliant. He's long dead now, sadly, Bob Price. I'd have loved to have met him. But yeah, I was always hoping that this car was going to be popular with the spectators. It's probably exceeded my hopes. It seems more popular than that. Some people don't get it. Some people, are not really into V8s. But
there was a little kid right next to me. Must have been about 4.
Yeah.
And he was going, the growly car's coming.
Yeah, that just about sums it up. Yeah. It's great. Western Park, we get the opportunity to run the ultra loud exhaust that we've got every so often, and Western was one of those events. It was great. It's a megaphone, so it's not just louder than a standard exhaust, it actually amplifies the sound, so it's shatteringly noisy. And people ask me why I'm deaf, and I don't think I need to explain that now.
To drive, I mean, okay, you've got all that. I mean, how much power is it?
This has got what we call it a demonstration engine. This one's 555 brake horsepower. Yeah. And you can hoon about in it like I do, and generally, make a fool of yourself and so on, but try and entertain the fans. Or you can drive it like Jimmy McRae drives it, because Jim's driven this now, it's got to be well over 20 times on events. He did the British Historic Rally Championship with it and helped us with the development of the car. And if you drive it like him and you feed the power in and you drive it properly, then it's amazing just how quick this thing is. It really is fast. And the suspension's great on it, so it hooks up really, really well. And we're allowed to run wider tyres now than we were at first. At one time the rules were we could run 185 70s and that was it. Well, now we can run slightly wider ones than that and better rubber, and you can get so much more traction. And if you're taking it seriously and you're on a proper event, you can really get this thing to shift. Yeah. But by the same token, it's also very, very easy to light up the bike tyres.
But I bet you with the power and the handling, it's actually surprised. I have a gut feeling that this is actually relatively easy to drive, because it must communicate quite quickly when it's going to go and slide easily, and it's easy to catch, I imagine. Yeah,
one of the things you can do with this car that's harder with an Escort is you can start the back wheels spinning and then you can keep them spinning. So whereas with an Escort, they tend to, so they'll go so far sideways on tarmac and then they'll try to straighten themselves up. With this, because you've got so much power, you can just keep sliding it, and it's just tremendous fun. Jim was once asked, which was his favourite rally car of all time, and he said the Metro 6R4, because it was Group B. He was in the middle of the Group B thing. It was exciting. The car was amazing. And then somebody said, well, what was the most fun? And he pointed at this and said, that by a country mile. And I think it doesn't get any better than that for me, because I've been a fan of Jim since the 70s.
Me too, yeah. Him and Russell Brooks.
And Russell Brooks, yeah, that era was just amazing.
Together were brilliant, weren't they?
Yeah, it was incredible. Because we've been on such a journey with this car. We've done so many things with it. We managed to get Jan Hettemer over from South Africa to come and drive it. We've had Stig Blomqvist drive it, and he loved the car, and it's just been wonderful. And now that COVID's hopefully more under control, we'll be able to get out a lot more next year and try and do some more events with the car. But we've done events that I never really I always wondered whether I'd like them or not. We've done a couple of hill climbs, and they've been fantastic. And some of the demonstration rallies that we do are brilliant. And we've been out to Spain with it. It's been out to Spain 3 times, and the reaction we get out there is just insane. So it's been brilliant. I've met all sorts of people. I've met some of my heroes, and it's just been fantastic.
That basically is what it's all about.
This is the thing, you know, at the end of the day, I always feel that I'm there, if I'm doing a demo, I'm there to try and entertain the spectators. And you'll see pictures afterwards with people with great big grins on their faces and so on. And I think, yeah, that's what it's all about. That's what I want to do. I want to entertain. I'm not the fastest driver by a long chalk. You know, Malcolm Wilson from Ford, I gave him till I was 60 to ring me with the offer of a works drive, but it never happened. It just never happened. So I've given that up now. It's not going to happen. So seriously, no. I mean, I've never been quick enough to get anywhere on rallies. But what I can do is entertain people with this car, and it's just brilliant.
I'd say you definitely give people the biggest smile.
Thank you. That's what it's all about for me.
Okay, so this is a customer car. Tell me a bit about this.
Well, we started building this car a few years ago, and this was meant to be a replica of one of the race cars that they ran out there. And we started it, and then we got busy at work and put it on one side for a while and so on. And we didn't get around to finishing the thing off. And we've got a long-term customer here called Jonathan Gale. And Jonathan borrowed my Firenza to do an event in Mallorca and absolutely adored it. He just loved the car. So when he saw that we got this body shell that was part finished, he asked us if we could buy it. And I thought, well, yeah, all right, it's going to be ages before we get this thing done. Let's do that. So we built this car as a bit of a dual purpose one. You can run it in the setup that it's here, which is similar to my car, in that it meets the historic specifications. So we've got narrow arches and so on, and it's got the right roll cage in, and you've got the smaller brakes on it and what have you. But he wants to do more events in Mallorca. So for Mallorcan events, the thing it looks crazy. It's got huge arches on it, enormous wheels, big brakes, big engine. It just looks fantastic. And we're hoping that early next year we're going to be able to get it back out there again, and then he's going to try and do probably half a dozen of the events over there. But this is everything that we've learned from my car we've put into this one to make this that little bit better.
Wow. So it's in terms of spec, is it similar in terms of the engine and...
Yeah, for historic rounds we're stuck with a 5-litre engine. We've got to run smaller brakes and so on. There are strong restrictions on what you can do. But in Mallorca and a lot of the European events, the restrictions are a lot less. So he can do things with the car out there that we wouldn't get away with over here. I suppose I could do for demonstration rallies. I could do that if it came down to it. But I'm happy with TDH. TDH is my baby, and I'm happy with it as it is. But for certain events with Jonathan, I wouldn't say the sky's the limit, but it's pretty much as far as you're going to get with one of these things. And it's just a sensational looking car.
Well, I'm sure you'll agree that Firenza V8 was absolutely mind-blowing. And if you ever go to historic rallying and that car's turning up, I assure you will hear it before it arrives. It's truly spectacular, and he's a really nice guy as well. I'm sure you'll agree. Now, Chevrolet is part of GM, and GM has an Australian an Australian division called Holden, and Holden put the Chevy V8s in a lot of their cars, and probably the one that most people here will know about in the UK is the Vauxhall Munaro and the VXR 8 that followed. Well, for me, the Monaro is the purest shape, and here is a really nice example with a really nice guy. So without further ado,
Hi, I'm Sean. This is my Monaro VXR. I was 12-year-old when I first saw this car, and it was sliding around Top Gear test track, and everyone wants a car like that, a proper muscle car.
and so this is the what was the Holden.
Yeah.
Vauxhall imported them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this one's pretty early on, isn't it? It's
Yeah, so it's a 2001 VXR, so 2004 VXR LS1. So the VXR started in 2006 as an LS2 6-litre. Before that they made 50 or 60 LS1 VXRs tuned to just shy of 400 horse. And that's what this is. This is build number 5, so it's, other than a lad I know restoring one, this is the earliest one that people know of. And the LS1's regarded as the best LS because of the cable throttle and just other bits and bobs. There's a few nice facts about an LS1 engine. I did originally want an LS2 with big nostrils on bonnet, but I picked this up at such a good price, and with it being such a rare model, I couldn't really say no.
Tell me about the specs of the car. So it's an LS1, about 400 odd brake.
So it's an LS1 5.7 V8. It has LSD in back. These wheels are bespoke to this car, to the LS1 VXR. So is the interior, rear bumper and exhaust. I think standard power is 386. This had a few things done. So this should be around 400, 410. Chassis is basically Vauxhall Amiga, Vauxhall Carlton, Senator. And it's kind of a supersessor to Lotus Carlton, as a lot of people say. Very basic agricultural V8. Good fun, easy to maintain, and noisy.
What was the thought process when were you looking for one of these, or did it sort of you spot it?
I've always wanted one, always. It's an absolute dream car. But obviously finances don't allow when you're at such a young age, and insurance, things like that. And it's basically a modern Lotus Carlton, which is my dream car. And then when you start having kids and things, you realise you're not going to get a chance to buy a dream car again. So I thought, I've had a kid, I'll buy a 3-door coupe, but I can't fit a kid in that's really thirsty and expensive to run, as you do. But I'm glad I did. It's the best decision I made. Yeah. And I do have a kid in, but I have babysit it back in. Kid does actually fit in, and it's good. It's good fun. Yeah.
What's it like to live with one of these?
It's thirsty. It's thirsty, and when you start work at 2, 3 a.m, it's noisy. So you have to kind of roll down the street, push it, roll and jump in and start it as it's rolling. In my previous job driving through town, it was doing 13 to a gallon on a good day. Now I've got a long commute, it's doing 19 on a run. On motorway you can see 25 to a gallon. Insurance is fine. I had a diesel BMW that were a lot more to insure. Insurance is nice and cheap. Replacement parts are really hard for the actual car itself, for the body. All the door handles are Vauxhall Amiga, and the courtesy lights on the door of Vauxhall Vectra. So things like that are quite easy, generic GM stuff. The easy parts are the engine parts to get, because obviously everything's LS engine parts, so it's all stateside or Aussie-land, things like that. But body-wise, you can't find anything, nothing. Bumpers are thousands of pounds, bonnets are thousands of pounds. So you just got to drive it nice and careful, especially in slippy conditions like this.
It looks beautiful. And what's the reaction from the public?
You get a lot of people talking to you. Everyone calls it a Commodore, because a lot of people, when they've been to Australia or on holiday or whatever else, they get a Commodore, and it does look similar. I mean, the shape's similar, but obviously it's a 3-door coupe version of the Commodore. It's a really positive reaction. I've never had anyone dislike it so far. It's a very charismatic, old school kind of car, so it's not a flash, obnoxious kind of car, but it is a car that people can appreciate, I think.
And to drive, what's the experience like?
Oh, yeah, I enjoy it. It's comfy. It's a GT. Despite what Top Gear portray, it's not always a hooligan. It's a really comfortable GT car. It's really comfortable GT car. The guy that had it before me, well, the original owner, the first owner, he was a company rep, and he says the longest he ever did was 900 miles in a day. It must have cost a lot of money in fuel, but he said he got out feeling refreshed, absolutely fine. It's a really comfy car, and I bought it to do things like Nürburg, NC 500, nice long runs, and I intend to drive it as much as I can.
Is it manual?
Manual, yeah, 6 speed.
6 speed?
6 speed, yeah, it's T56. So it's used in a lot of Chevy applications. The actual T56 gearbox casing came from Dodge Viper, the first incarnation, I think. I'm not 100% on that, but I think that's what the first incarnation was. So it's a very old gearbox, it's agricultural. It's like cocking a bolt action rifle trying to get it in gear. It's very mechanical, but it's a positive feel.
Advice to someone who might be looking for something like this?
The very biggest thing on these is rot, the biggest killer. Running them low on oil, doing track days, you get a lot of oil starvation, and then that's gone, engine's gone. Mechanically wise, just your usual rear wheel drive stuff, you know, your donuts, prop, things like that. When I first got this, I had to replace the centre bearing, but again, they're inexpensive, at £40, plus shipping from stateside. The rear diff, make sure the rear diff's working fine. Gearbox is fine, because the gearbox failed on us at 14,000 miles or £5,500 to replace back then, because that were under warranty. But I don't think they're prone to failure. I think it was just an early problem with this car. The biggest thing is rot, by a long shot. It's obviously only a Vauxhall chassis, and being an Australian car, they don't get undersealed. So on this car, this actual car, I got really cheap because the chassis legs are rotten under the battery. But it's not ended well. It can be repaired because the panels are available. People can make the chassis legs for these cars, and the chassis rail sections are available as well. Other than that, there's not really much that goes wrong with them. They're a very basic agricultural car. I mean, it's a pushrod V8. There's nothing to go wrong on them. That's really it. The brake calipers are known for seizing. I had to rebuild these, which were, again, it was 200 quid. It's not going to break the bank, and I should get another 10 years out of them, hopefully.
You mentioned that this is an early version and it was like pre-VXR.
Yes, so the LS1 is obviously what's found in the CV8, which is the 330 horse softer touring kind of version of the Monaro, and then everyone knows about that and they know about the 6 litre VXR. I didn't even know these existed. So the LS1 VXR is basically a CV8 engine tuned up to nearly what the VXR is meant to be, with firm suspension, nicer seats, things like that. Just all spec'd up to what VXR should be, except from the fluted bonnet, which I've kind of grown to love. I did want the fluted bonnet, but they're only aesthetics, they're not real anyway. So that don't really make any difference. But the LS1 for me is the better engine, just because it's not got electric throttle or anything like that to go wrong.
What are the plans for the car going forward?
So this car's booked in. I've got a guy that used to make chassis for a place called Magnum Motorsport. So he's going to take the front end of this car and chop it all off. Obviously drop the subframe, drop the engine out, take all the front of the chassis off. It is still on road obviously, but it won't pass another MOT after this year. So the front end of the car's getting cut off. He's making some new chassis legs. The car's going to be fully sandblasted underneath, took back to bare metal, fully undersealed once the new legs are on. And then after that, I'm going to have an LS7 clutch or more uprated clutch, and then stick a Pro Charger on and aim for 600-700 horse or whatever. Sky's your limit with these engines, really.
This is a celebration of Chevy V8s that aren't in Chevys, but they're still in GM cars. Yeah. But this isn't your only one, is it?
No, I've got a 400 cubic, so 6.6 Chevy V8, which is going in my 72 Firenza. The build page is Foley the Forgotten Firenza, if anyone wants to follow that. But that's going to be, you can get them to around 485 horse and around 510 foot-pounds of torque, just with a cam, carb, a few basic bits of tuning, or you can again supercharge them and go huge power. That fate's not decided yet. The car's been stood 39 years, so it's obviously rotten. So I'll get bodyweight done, strengthened, widened, and then it's got a Jag E-type axle with an LSD, and then slot this nice big Chevy V8 in and see how we get on from there.
And what are your plans with that?
Win some shows, take it down quarter mile, enjoy it in nice weather, just everything. It's going to be a very expensive, long drawn out project. It's probably going to be 3 to 5 years until everything's ready. I'm still debating whether to go for a manual gearbox 4-speed on the floor sort of thing, as they call it in Yankee land, or whether to go for the 350th 400th auto. I really can't decide yet. But the plans for it are to run obviously large power, nice lightweight, LSD, it's an E-type rear axle. Chrome it all up like it were in 70s. And the guy who actually built the car in 75 is still around, and I reunited him with the car once it was found. So obviously plans are to keep him involved.
So what's the history with the car? Was it a drag car or something?
No, it was originally a 2.3 Firenza SL 2300 Sport, which was the very top Viva, yeah, basically. A Viva coupe, very top spec. The interior were all done by his mum back in the day. He were in his 20s and he wanted to build, he was a hot rod builder back in 60s, 70s. And he'd always had minis and things. He wanted a rear wheel drive to put a Jag IRS on, so he found this Firenza, which I've not asked him, but I think it was crash damaged. Because when I sandblasted it, there were a lot of gobbo and a lot of metal missing. So I think it was crash damage, because the car at the time, he built it in 75, so it'll only been 3 years old. So to cut the chassis and make a frame and put an IRS axle on was a very bold move at that age. So obviously, the Firenza at that age, it won all the shows in the 70s. It's featured in Tesla, well, it is the video Tesla Girls by OMD on YouTube in 1982. The car disappeared in 1979 with 6,000 miles on clock after it left his possession. A family bought it and they emigrated to Australia and left it just in this garage. The music video for Tesla Girls were 81, 82. No one knows why the car ended up in there.
I'm old enough to remember that.
Yeah, I'm not. This is research. The car featured in a few things like that. It did a few burlesque girl photo shoots and things back in the day, and it's got a lot of trophies to go with it. So the idea was to restore it back to what it were, and then I've decided to go down my own route a little bit. I'm doing a homage to the original car and keeping Brian, the guy who built it, Brian, and all his family are in the loop and following the build progress. And the ideas have come from basically Brian, what he would have done with it if money were no object. So it's got the slot mags on the rear, and I think they're 12 inches wide on the rear, 12, 13, 14 inches wide, I can't remember, they're huge, they came off a Chevy Bel Air. Rear axle it's not been shortened, so in the 70s a lot of people used to shorten the Jag axles. Yeah. Instead of doing that, what we've done is we've widened the body massively, not with wheel arches but the actual old metalwork of the car. We got a Viva Estate chopped up and used the Viva Estate rear quarters, so there's plenty of metal to flare. The back arch was really, really wide and tubbed out the whole body. So then these massive wheels can fit underneath the body and obviously still be legal and safe. The car's going to have a roll cage and everything else, so I can take my young one in it and feel a bit safer. Brakes will be Renault 21 Brembo brakes, obviously all adapted to fit. And then obviously the cherry on the top is the Chevy V8.
Right, question. Am I going to be invited back when you get a reunion with the original owner and the family and we get all of you together?
A few show organisers are trying to organise it so it all happens and gets revealed at the same place. So yeah, it'll be a public event, so everyone will be invited.
Brilliant, because we'll have to come and cover that.
Yeah, of course, that's fine.
And in the meantime, you've got a brilliant car here in the meantime, so you know, so thank you very much for letting us come and have a look. And I'll get some shots.
Yeah, perfect, yeah.
Two spectacular cars, I'm sure you'll agree, and two really nice guys. Thank you for letting us do your cars. And if you have a car that you think will be of interest to us, then please send us an email to enwinsseats@gmail.com. The address is down here below. And tell us about your car, send a few photos, and we could well be contacting some of you to arrange to do your cars later in the year. Can't promise Charmaine will be with me, but I will certainly come along and film your car. Tell me a little bit about your car, send me some photographs. The kind of cars we're looking for are sports cars, kit cars, hot rods, low volume cars, supercars, anything that you think people would enjoy watching. If you think you've got a special car, send us an email. We might get in touch. We might come and feature your car anywhere in the UK, because I'm travelling a lot around the UK to film cars. And Charmaine will be back with us later in the year. She's a little bit busy at the moment because since she was last with us, she has become a grandmum. Can you believe it? Gorgeous Charmaine is a grandmum, very young grandmum. Anyway, congratulations to Charmaine, and she will be joining us later in the year. Right, thank you for watching, and like I said, do subscribe, spread the word. We really do want to get to 1,000 subscribers because for one thing, it gets us noticed by the car industry as well, which helps us get some interesting cars from them, concept cars and stuff like that, that we can then bring to you. So it's reciprocal. You help us, we help you, and we want to entertain you. But stay tuned, check out the other stuff on the channel, and we'll see you next time.